Hello and welcome to another standard video here on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're checking out this blue-red flicker warp deck, making use of a couple new cards from Through the Omenpaths. One of those is the Giantcraft Helm, a 1-mana equipment. You get to attach it for free whenever a creature with mana value 5 or greater enters, giving it +4/+4. So that's quite the bonus. Otherwise it costs 5 mana to equip. So the Helm is tailor-made for Nova Hellkite, a creature we can warp for just 2 and a red, a 4/5 flyer with haste. When it enters, deals 1 damage to a creature an opponent controls. So if we have the Helm in play, get to warp the Hellkite and now attack for 8 haste damage, and then if we cast it later from exile, it will still do the same. And then besides the Hellkite, we also have a Quantum Riddler. Now this one does not have haste, so maybe doesn't benefit as much from the Helm the first time we warp it, but it will draw us a card. And then it's only 2 mana to warp as opposed to 3 on the Hellkite, so that also makes it much easier to combine it with our various flicker spells, such as Splash Portal, exiling a creature, returning it into play. If it happens to be an Otter, which we do have in this deck, we also get to draw a card, but Splash Portal is basically here to reset our various warp creatures, so instead of going into exile, they will stay on the battlefield, and in the case of the Riddler, we get to draw an extra card. In the case of the Hellkite, we get to deal 1 more damage. And then the Riddler can eventually also suit up any Helms we have in play to get in for a ton of damage. And then we also have the new Spectral Restitching, which is an instant speed flicker effect, exiling X target artifacts and or creatures, returning them into play at the beginning of the next end step. Now this can also be used on opposing creatures, which has a ton of useful applications. Can essentially fog an attack by exiling all the opponent's attackers. We can permanently get rid of opposing tokens by exiling those. Can even target artifacts, so for as long as Agatha's Soul Cauldron isn't standard, we can also use it to reset the cauldron and get rid of any cards they may have exiled with it. So it does have a ton of use cases, but usually we want to target our own creatures that we're going to warp, so we can maybe warp a Riddler for 2, and then for X=1 we can flicker it, draw another card, and keep the Riddler in play. And then we've got 4 more creatures here with the Thundertrap Trainer. A 1/2, when it enters we get to look at the top 4, revealing a non-creature, non-land to put into our hand, and can also cast it with Offspring to make an extra 1/1 version, so that can provide a nice bit of card advantage, and it's also another creature we actively want to be flickering with either Splash Portal and or Spectral Restitching. Can maybe keep multiple trainers on the battlefield and then flicker them all at once, finding a ton of extra spells. And then rounding out the deck, we've got Torch the Tower as a cheap removal spell. Can also maybe bargain it by sacrificing an artifact or maybe one of our tokens. So it also plays well with Offspring from Trainer, and it also plays well with our various room cards, such as the Roaring Furnace. Can use it as a 2-mana removal spell, and then later sacrifice the enchantment to deal 3 with the Torch. But we can also eventually unlock the Steaming Sauna, so that's still useful in the grindier matchups as a 5-mana card draw engine that will draw us an extra card each turn. And then another room here is the Charred Foyer/Warped Space. Can play the Foyer to exile the top card of our library that we get to play this turn, so that can be a source of card advantage. Or we can also play the Warped Space for 6 mana, and then once each turn we get to pay 0 mana rather than pay the cost of a spell in exile. So we get to cast any warped creatures we might have in exile for free, so that's also pretty nice. And all these room cards also have a combined mana value of 7 in the case of Furnace, and 10 in the case of Foyer, so they're also perfect to maybe discard to an ill-timed explosion, dealing damage equal to the discarded mana value to all creatures. So that can also just be a 4-mana draw 2 in matchups where we don't need the board wipe, but we also have these expensive warp creatures that can deal 5 damage each, so those are also quite good to discard when needed. And then the mana base has some nice blue-red dual lands, get to Surveil with the Falls, and then Fountain Port offers a bit more utility, can also generate tokens that we might want to sacrifice to our Torch the Tower, or just generate a fish token if we don't have anything else going on that we can later also suit up with the Giantcraft Helm. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw with a Keeper. Turn 2 we can Furnace, turn 3 Warp and Flicker. At least that's the plan. And then an Explosion, maybe not a priority, need to hit some land drops. Double Starting Town into a Gremlin Tamer.
5 target for Furnace. 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 5
So we can expect them to be a Sheltered by Ghosts type of deck, so that could still get rid of our Riddler. Let's see if they have instant speed removal. And draw a card. And then may as well try. But this may not work out. Can try again next turn. Alright, no, this worked out. Riddler's back. Maybe they've got a 2/3 flash that draws off enchantments. Would make sense. Yep, there it is, Entity Tracker. So had I kept Explosion, discarding a 5-mana Riddler could have been a decent answer. Opponent also with a Shelter by Ghosts. Although we can use the Restitching to maybe exile the Tracker, get our Riddler back. Just need to pay the ward. Alright, opponent's tapped out, so coast is clear to exile the Tracker. Or we could Furnace, that's a cleaner solution. Get to draw a card again. Maybe play Trainer before we exile a bunch of stuff. Tamer off Volgavoth's Lair also makes a Gremlin. Okay, so good start by attacking. Opponent's gonna bounce. That's fine. I might regret not warping first, because then I could have maybe bounced both the Riddlers back. Although I could try and dig for a sweeper with a Trainer instead. And then next turn I could maybe set up double Riddler, flicker both. Although that's going to require a bit more mana. For now, Torch the Tower's fine. So let me just torch what's scarier, probably the Hull Creeper. And then just play a tap land. Splash Portal's good. Can always draw more cards with a Sauna, so card draw aplenty. Tamer takes flight. Makes another Gremlin. This attack kind of implies a instant speed aura. Could be the one that protects a creature. Alright, so if I were to warp 2 Riddlers, I'm still a mana short of targeting both. So maybe we wait till next turn to set that up. And then for now I could just warp 1 Riddler and splash it. But we'll see what the Trainer finds first. Another Torch. See if this works. They had a Flood Maw once again. Okay, so that works. And then do I Torch now? I guess we'll wait. Since their last card could be the hexproof trick, although maybe I should just flush it out before they make more gremlins. That worked out. Okay, so next turn, Warp. Warp, I still need an untapped land to restitching for 2, but flickering the trainers is still good value. So I could Warp 1 and then flicker 3. Can also use it to just exile the opponent's tokens for good. Talent levels up, can get back Floodmaw. So that can maybe interfere with our restitching plan. No real need to Explosion. And drew the land, so now I could restitching a second Riddler. And then keep 1. Yeah, that's probably good enough. I guess never mind, our opponent doesn't even have blue mana available, so we can restitching for free. And get those back. And our opponent scoops it up, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand, just missing the warp creatures. And there's one. Maybe not as good as Riddler when we don't have the Helm, but I don't want to turn it down. So we'll just pass. Opponent on a red deck, red-white, and a voice. We can take out with Furnace. And then next turn I get to Hellkite and Splash. Artist Talent, so not entirely sure what they're up to. Riddler, I may be safe for next turn. And for now get the damage going. Although I could have dealt 2 damage with Hellkite entering twice. Opponent's gonna destroy Fountain Port. We'll survive. And Hellkite gets lost. Okay, so Riddler Splash, at least we'll draw us a few cards. And then we can explore. Trainer's fine. Close to casting it with Offspring for 6 mana. Next turn I can maybe unlock the Sauna. Although Get Lost can also destroy our room. Split up deals with the Riddler. So unlock, play land. Opponent levels up their talent, so that could be scary. Restitching does not target enchantments, but now we have a couple options, including Trainer, Riddler, and then I can still restitching for 2 to flicker both. And draw another Trainer. So now I'm debating whether or not I wait on the restitching to target more trainers. Well, that's ideal. Opponent goes for it first. So now I get to flicker both. And that's a lot of value. Find a Helm. And get our stuff back. and kind of like the foyer, could also go for another sauna, since we only have an explosion in hand. I mean, another restitching would be fine if we're expecting a sweeper, but they're probably going to cast it next turn. So, close call. Maybe it is another furnace for now, since we'll draw enough cards to enable it. Now Hellkite plus Helm is a nice combo. Riddler gets exiled. So our opponent is falling behind on card advantage. Alright, now the Overlord is a real threat. But the Hellkite can deal 8, so that's no joke. Could also just cast it for 5 mana, to be fair, since I don't have another way to really spend my mana. And then I can still go exploring as well. Another trainer's fine. Can our opponent answer the Hellkite? They're gonna level up talent, maybe have another exercise here. Get to untap. Okay, so now what? Well, opponent's gonna concede, so they must not have had an answer after all. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a Riddler plus Splash Portal, so we'll try. Turn 2 can play the Trainer, and then maybe at a later point, restitching can also flicker everything. Also can't underestimate the utility of targeting opposing creatures or artifacts. You can essentially eliminate a token that way. So I'll play the Trainer. Opponent's got removal. Burst Lightning. So if this is a burn deck, I don't mind them burning my creature. And yep, there we see the Challenger. So a Riddler should be effective. I might have missequenced. I think I should have played Mount on last turn, warp my Riddler, and then if I draw another Spire Bluff, I would have been able to play it and then still Splash Portal. Since I played the island first, that was not an option anymore. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna matter too much. Opponent is attacking here, implying that they can maybe deal 3 to the Riddler to finish it off. I don't think I want to make that trade since I'm out of other spells. So Boros Charm goes face. Next turn I can block and maybe use the restitching. Does mean giving up on the foyer. Yeah, I could also still attack Splash Portal just to draw, and then still have restitching available. And find another Riddler, so we can maybe set that one up next turn. And the Trainer should be serviceable. Bluffs puts me to 7. Pyromancer to 5. So yeah, we could just get burnt out. So then can hit for 4, play another Riddler. And then, yeah, it's gonna be tricky to deal those last 2 points of damage with her opponent at 10. Unless they shock in another Foundry, but don't expect them to. Yeah, I think it's still worth it to be aggressive. Find a torch. Does that change my sequencing at all? I guess I can just restitching for 1 and keep torch up instead. Although this draws me an extra card. Yeah, I guess we'll do it for 2. Alright, let's see for dead. Helix me to 2, so I imagine we're dead here. And a Pyromancer, GG's. So yeah, maybe if I had a slightly different hand, I would have taken the trade for Challenger, and then we ended up drawing a lot of cards, so we probably would have been fine. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a reasonable hand. Can play Helm on 2, warp Hellkite with haste on 3, do it again. So that's a lot of damage. Opponent blue-black. Can hope they play a Deep Cavern Bat, because then we can snipe it no matter what they take. Yeah, there it is. Perfect. So Hellkite gets to eat the bat for free, get in for 8. That's quite satisfying. And our opponent's gonna scoop it up already. That's pretty funny, but yeah, opponent takes 8. Next turn we can do it again. And we also picked up the Foyer/Warped Space, which is also pretty good, and maybe eventually playing our Warped cards for free once each turn. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand needs a few more land drops before we can warp and restitching. But we can always catch up against aggro with an explosion, perhaps. So we'll try it. So I want to keep a land here, ideally. Turn 2 can play the Trainer. Or I could double Helm and hope to draw Splash Portal. Opponent Teamer Colors, maybe the Battle Crier combo deck. Yeah, I'll go for Trainer. And only have one choice. There's a Vitality, so this might actually be an Otter combo deck with a Vitality and the various Otters. So, yeah, this turn, just play a couple Helms. And then next turn, I can maybe warp plus restitching. Or we can first wipe the board. Opponent reading Helm for the first time, I'm sure. Get in for 3. And another Vitality. Okay. Another Riddler is interesting. I could Explosion first, could also Explosion with a Riddler in play. So I think we want to apply some pressure here. So let me warp. Can suit up the helms. And then a restitching for 1. Possible they have a bounce spell. Alright, so we get to keep the Riddler in play. Never mind, is this a double torch a tower? It looks like it. Sacrificing the Enduring Vitality. Well, was not expecting that. So they keep one in creature form. Okay, so ideally draw an untapped land so I can just cast the Riddler. Take 3. Could have also considered jumping because of explosion, but maybe we find another flicker spell. Now stock up goes digging. So our opponent's eventually going to try and combo with a 3-mana Blue Otter as well as Stormchaser's Talent with the Vitality making mana, the Otter untapping their creatures. So they can kind of go off out of nowhere. So if I can find a Torture Tower for Vitality, that would be nice. Analyze can now get the aforementioned creature. Floodcaller. Okay, so I can just cast a Riddler. And then hope our opponent cannot combo next turn. I think that still makes more sense than Explosion for just a Vitality. They still get the enchantment. Next turn may not be all that exciting. Can always discard an Explosion to the Explosion to deal 4. Now a Song for 4. Into Floodcaller. Uh-oh. And a Bushwhack. Untap everything. Are we just dead here? If they have the enchantment, perhaps. Stock up is not bad either. Could just be dead here. Have 2 blockers. Do get to wipe the board next turn at least. But yeah, there's a talent. Untap everything. At least Town Ain't Big Enough is no longer legal in Standard, but I'm sure they'll just find enough card draw spells to still get there. And yeah, these rats already look quite deadly to me. Alright, GG's. So block 2, take 12, so they need 1 more spell. And yeah, they're not fizzling with all these consults. So yeah, that's the combo. Floodcaller, Vitality, some tokens. Was not expecting the rats out of nowhere. But even had we cast the Explosion to get rid of the Vitality, they still get the enchantment, so really needed Torture Tower to exile it instead. So my only option was to maybe dig for it with a Trainer. But yeah, opponent already has lethal here. They're gonna bounce the Riddler. GG's. And torch my Trainer. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Can torch early on, and then turn 3 Riddler plus Splash Portal. I'll keep a Furnace, good against aggro, but if this is a slower matchup, can always play it for 5. And a Bat. So likely takes Torch, then we can just Furnace it. And that's what they take. So blue-black mid-range, most likely. Torch, a nice answer to Enduring Curiosity, being able to exile it for good. Our opponent keeps up 2 mana, so they could have removal for Riddler, so we'll take it slow with the Trainer instead. And our opponent's gonna stab it. Find, I want to say, the Restitching, so I can even flicker at instant speed. Don't need another land. I'm looking for more creatures now. Opponent's still missing a land. So now if I Riddler Splash Portal, they could still have a 2 mana answer. So it's not the ideal time to go for it. To be fair, next turn I can also cast it for 5. Or we can unlock the Sauna. I'm gonna play it safe here. Since I haven't been drawing lands, they must have some interaction. Alright, so now I can Riddler, see if that resolves, or I can just go for Sauna. But let's apply a bit of pressure here at least. Opponent's gonna shoot the Sheriff. We'll flicker at instant speed. They could still have a Flood Maw to bounce. Spell Pierce to counter. Alright. That was unexpected. So that works. Still get to draw my card. And find a replacement. And another one. So options aplenty. Could just cast a Riddler for 5. Or I can warp 2 of them and flicker them both. That's the power move. And try that again. Alright. And that's gonna do it. Double Riddler for the win. Alright, so we get to see this blue-red Flicker deck in action, and yeah, quite pleased with how the deck worked out. We've got some nice targets for our various splash portals and other flicker effects, can make use of the Helm to close out the game quickly, and we even have some other synergies with the room cards and the explosion, as the rooms have a high mana value. So overall, there's a lot to the deck, can still of course be customized, there's a lot of wiggle room, but for now it seems like a good starting point. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.